Alright, good morning. I'm here with Mark Rainey, and he is the author of over 200 published works altogether. I think
Right.
from your website.
Yeah, I've
including
had
short stories.
I have had over 200 short stories published in various markets over the last 40 years. I've got about a dozen novels, 6 short fiction collection, and I've edited several anthologies of other writers' works. And I don't know if anybody might remember the old Dark Shadows TV show with Barnabas Collins and Quentin Collins, werewolves, vampires. I've done some scripts for audio dramas that a company in England produced, and that stars a number of the original show cast members.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So over the years, I've been at this about 40 years as a pro writer. Of course, I was writing all kinds of little comics and silly things in my younger days, but as a writer, I've focused on science fiction, fantasy, horror, particularly horror. I'm very keen on scary tales, and my latest book is called The House at Blacktooth Pond, and it is set in a fictionalized version of Martinsville-Henry County, and several of my books are. I'll give you a little bit of background. The cover is by an artist named J. Edward Neal, and it's the perfect scary illustration, I believe. And inside, you'll see this is a rendering, pen and ink rendering I did many years ago of the title house at Blacktooth Pond. When I was, I would say in my 20s, my brother and I would go wandering around Martinsville-Henry County. He'd like to go out and find places where he could walk his dog, who was a very excitable young fellow. And one day, or one evening actually, we went down this little dead-end road somewhere and found a path that led back into the woods. And of course, Luther, the dog, he took off, and we went down the path, and we discovered the house. We discovered the house back there that looked very much like that. If you've ever seen the Blair Witch Project, it looked reminded me very much of the Blair Witch place. And being young and brash the way we were, we decided to go exploring inside, and with no flashlights or other safety considerations, we started wandering around inside. There were holes in the floor and an old rickety staircase, and we went up it and somehow came out of there without dying. But anyway, that place is always stuck in my mind, and so I wanted to use that as a setting for this book. And the Blacktooth Pond part of it goes back to when I was in high school at Martinsville High. In my biology class, our teacher was going to have us do water quality experiments, and so he led us back this little dirt road behind the high school, and we came upon a pond, which was at the time just back in the woods, and nobody really knew about it. And we were collecting soil and water samples and stuff, but the place really stood out for me because at one end of it there were all these old blackened tree trunks that stuck up out of the water, and the name Blacktooth Pond just came into my head, and so that stuck with me. In later years, I learned that the Lester family owned that pond and land, but to me, it's always been Blacktooth Pond. And so for this book, I combined the house setting and the pond setting to create what I hope is a creepy atmosphere for something of a ghost story. I've had this book described as a ghost story that goes off the rails on LSD.
I can't wait to read it.
I hope it will be good and creepy.
Yeah. And Blue Devil Island, that's the one you did that was set back in World War II.
Yes.
So,
Blue Devil Island, it was one that I spent years researching. It takes place in the Pacific in World War II. I've always been fascinated by aviation in general. I love, aerial stories, particularly World War II combat. As a kid, I built model airplanes, and I became a real student of World War II history, and so I decided I wanted to combine two of my favorite passions, horror and military aviation. So I did years and years of research. I actually talked to a member of the original Flying Tigers before he passed away, and the book is set in the Solomons in 1943 and involves something that turns out to be a little scarier than the Japanese at the time. If anybody's familiar with Lovecraftian horror, this would also fall into the Lovecraftian horror, where it's some call it cosmic horror, the things that are just so much larger than life that considers humanity basically irrelevant. Good and evil don't mean anything. It's just a power beyond comprehension, and so I love exploring different facets of that. And so that's, in a nutshell, what Blue Devil Island is about. But the history I tried to get as accurate as possible. I was able to find combat reports from pilots in the Pacific at that time. So
Okay.
if I said there was a massive storm on June 30th, it's because there really was.
Okay.
At least in that area. But the biggest compliment I guess I ever got was the CEO of the company I worked for a good many years ago said his father might like this book because he had been a Hellcat pilot in World War II in the Pacific. So he got a copy of the book for his dad, and a while later I got a phone call from his father at the office, and he said, "I almost couldn't believe you weren't there." And I was just like, why? To have an actual veteran of that
that's
time
huge.
say, that it was that convincing to
Right.
him. So that really did it for me, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. And speaking of good reviews, I don't think we mentioned it. So the house at Blacktooth Pond, it just got a starred review in Publishers Weekly, which y'all are probably not familiar with that. But as booksellers, that's where we go. That's where we go to get a whole lot of our recommendations. And to have a starred review in there is a big deal. So I'm excited for that to come out in print. That should be in my mailbox this week.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
That's a big honor.
I've had several books reviewed in Publishers Weekly, but this is the first one that was starred, and the writer said this is cosmic horror done right. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah,
I think I had mentioned at one time, after I finish a book, and, I obviously do some promotion and, whatever selling I could possibly do, but so often, as soon as the book is done, it's out of my mind, and then I'm hard at work on my next project. Mm-hmm. But this one has gotten good press, and I'm really trying to do to get it out into the public eye as much as I can. The publisher is Crossroad Press. It's a fairly small publisher, but they also have some of the biggest names in literature, literally. So it started out, the press did, by a friend of mine who's a writer, and this was about almost 20 years ago, I think. E-books were getting so big that a lot of major writers, once their works went out of print, they went out of print. They didn't keep reissuing. So Dave Wilson, who owns Crossroad, decided, I think it would be neat to get the rights from some of these big authors and re-release in paperback or even hardback in some cases, their older works. And that took off so well that he started acquiring newer works, both by big authors and smaller authors. And Blue Devil Island was actually published originally in hardback by Five Star Books, but Dave picked up the rights to Blue Devil Island and published it in paperback, ebook. So now they publish so many writers. I don't even know how many in their catalog now, but hundreds. Biggest to smallest. They do ebooks, they do paperbacks, occasional hardbacks, and audiobooks. And so the audiobook of Blacktooth Pond has just come out from Audible, and the narrator is a fellow named Joshua Saxon, and he's done ebooks for some of the biggest in the business. He has a stellar reputation, and he is an incredible reader. So if you're into audiobooks, this one is available. Blue Devil Island is on audiobook, also narrated by Joshua Saxon.
Yeah. I'll have to look and see if those are on Libro FM too. Do you know
They
if they
may be. I don't know where all the distribution outlets are.
Okay. Those. Yeah, and I know this one for the ebook and for the print book, those are both available on bookshop.org.
Correct.
Which benefits indie bookstores. So I always like to give them a shout out when I can.
Oh, yes, yes, indeed.
And some other favorites that I love, like, is your Ameriscare series. Well, Elizabeth Massey's
right.
Ameriscares, and you've written several of those. And I just finished reading the one from Michigan, The Dragon of Lake Superior. So tell us a little bit about those.
Okay. The Ameriscare series is one that writer Elizabeth Massey came up with. She's a Virginia writer, lives in Waynesboro. She is an multi-award-winning author and has written children's books, mid-grade books, young adult fiction, historical fiction, you name it. She's about done it. A lot of nonfiction. In fact, her entire catalog of works is being collected by, I believe it's the University of Pittsburgh Library.
Okay.
And so her work will basically be immortalized in that library.
Yeah.
HarperCollins did a series of Dark Shadows novels in the early 2000s, so she and I collaborated on one of those. And I did several scripts for a Dark Shadows audio drama series by a company in England, and those actually starred the cast members of the original show. But Ameriscares is a series for young readers, mid-grade, junior high. But we write them to be hopefully entertaining for everyone, all the way up to adults. But when it's done, there's going to be 50 books in the series. There's 5 writers, including Beth Massey and I. Each book deals with the legends and myths of particular states, and when it's all done, there's going to be 50. I've done, I think, 6. I did like the Lair of the Mothman. It's called The Mothman from West Virginia. The Dragon of Lake Superior is about the Loch Ness monster type critter that supposedly lives in Lake Superior. I did New Hampshire, Georgia, and Ohio. The Ohio one is called Fear the Grassman, and the Grassman is basically a Bigfoot creature.
Wonder what Virginia's will be.
It's been done. Beth Massey did Virginia.
Okay.
And I cannot remember off the top of my head which one,
Okay.
which legend that is. It's supposed to be in the Shenandoah Valley, I remember. And I read it years ago that I think she's done the majority of the books in the series, and it's about halfway. I think we've got 25 or maybe 30 books in the series done, but there's 5 authors working actively to do them. And I may yet do some more, but I don't know, because we've so many projects and so little time.
Yeah, you've got a lot going on.
Yeah, and I am right now working on a science fiction novel collaboration with Elizabeth Massey, and we're about halfway done with that. Hopefully to finish around summertime, early summer.
All right, and then you've got AuthorCon coming up.
Yes, at the end of this month, March 28th through 30th in Williamsburg, Virginia, there's an event called AuthorCon that attracts the biggest and most horror, science fiction, fantasy authors in the country, and it's a charity event run by a group called Scares That Care, headed by Brian Keene, big name horror author. The charity itself picks each year a group of individuals with severe medical issues, and the proceeds above the overhead for the convention all go to the charity and directly to help the individuals that they've selected. This is AuthorCon 5, but Scares That Care has been going on beyond that, but they have collected thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to help people who are in dire need and have an excellent success rate, at keeping those folks going. And so your money supports authors, and it supports the charity itself, so you get the best of all worlds there. And it's not very expensive for attendees. I believe it's like $20 for a day pass. So I don't know if anybody's going to be in Williamsburg last week in March, but it's a great event, and it's probably my favorite convention anywhere. I do a lot of cons, and AuthorCon is always the one I look forward to.
Okay, so that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 28th,
28th through 30th of March. That's correct. Yes, at the DoubleTree Inn, I think.
Okay, and then May 3rd, he will be with us over in the town park at Ridgeway's Bee Festival, the first annual Bee Festival. So he'll be over there signing his new book, and that'll be 10 to 3 on May 3rd in Ridgeway Town Park on Almond Street. All right, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate you.